Like most anime fans my age, Neon Genesis Evangelion was one of the first huge obsessions I had. Something that made me delve deep into trying to understand its lore and the universe that it created. Years later, I would of course find out that most of the Christian symbolism was complete bullcrap that even the people from Gainax said they wouldn't have put in had they known that it would be released outside Japan. But I still think for the most part the series holds up. It's an excellent anime that uses the aesthetics and storytelling elements of monster-a-week giant super robot shows to explore themes of depression and how people relate, and most importantly, that the only way to get out of depression is to actually love yourself. People can help you, but they won't do it for you. So obviously, this series worked pretty well for me, and I was pretty hugely into it. And I was also pretty heartbroken when, after ADV Films went under a few years ago, Neon Genesis Evangelion was completely out of print, and there was no legal way to get a hold of it. Much to my horror, one of my formative favorite anime was impossible to get a hold of. And then last year, we had an announcement that Netflix had got the rights to it. That was exciting. One of the most popular and influential anime of the 90s would be available to the mass market again. But it came with some caveats. As months ticked by, we started finding out, oh, they're not going to use the original English dub. They're replacing all the actors. Sort of disclaimer here. Tiffany Grant is not one of my closest friends, but she's someone who I've worked with quite a bit. She was the original English voice of Asuka, so I would be lying to you if I said I didn't have a little bit of a horse in this race. The shock of the new dub cast was confusing to many, and the more we found out about it, the weirder it got, until earlier this last week, as of when I'm recording this, the new dub went live, and the translation, along with the translation of the subtitles, left a lot of fans wanting. We're gonna go through that today. That's this video. Evangelion on Netflix. What precisely happened? You might have noticed I really don't talk much about dubs or subs on this channel, and that's mostly because the dub versus sub debate hasn't actually been relevant since the VHS days, when you actually had to pick one or the other. Now, why Eva stands out to people, as opposed to another series where we could bring up dubs, is that the English dub of Eva was pretty fantastic. Especially for when it came out, it was head and shoulders better than almost any other English localization of any anime coming out at the time. And it is a crying shame that it wasn't actually aired on TV till several years later. This was a really strong cast, and it got a lot of the ideas across, well, changing a couple of the lines to make it flow a little bit better and to make the dialogue seem less stilted. And much to everyone's disappointment, this new dub wasn't just a bunch of new actors. It wouldn't have been on the actors anyway. For the most part, actors don't control what parts they get. I mean, obviously they're going to audition, but on the other hand, voice work is a competitive industry, and a lot of times, especially if you're a small-time actor, you're just going to take whatever work you can get. Chances are a lot of these people might not have known about Evangelion before. Heck, the new Asuka has never done voice work before this show. She's a stage actress. So it's hard to hold anything against them, but it was obvious that the script was stilted. Lines are translated a little too precisely. No one talks the way that a person normally would. Any sort of idiom or just making the sentence sound a little bit more natural is completely gone. And weirdest of all, the Eva piloting kids are referred to in the singular as children. And by that I mean Shinji Ikari by himself is not referred to as the third child. He is the third children. Singular. When I saw that, I figured this was one of those weird things that happened because of a misunderstanding on the Japanese end. This would not be the first time an English dub was hurt by a Japanese director making decisions based on a language they barely speak. But it was still weird and awkward, right? And then we got to this. Yes, the most infamous bit of this new audio. A powerful scene from the original series in episode 24 when Kaoru Nagisa makes his first appearance in the story and proclaims to Shinji, "I think I love you." The line is weirdly replaced with, "You are worthy of my grace. It means I like you." Homoerotic subtext completely gone. Understandably, fans were incensed. Accusations of queer erasure were quickly thrown out, and all of it was, in my opinion, pretty justified. Kaoru Nagisa is right up there with Subaru from Tokyo Babylon being among the first times I had ever been exposed to any queer characters in media. Yeah, anime was pretty important to me, you guys. It's kind of embarrassing, but considering when I was growing up, not really. So, this is strange, right? And it's really tempting to jump on it and say, this is on Netflix. What a bad decision. This was tone deaf. This was foolish. This was Netflix biting off more than they could chew and pulling some queer erasure in the middle of Pride Month. Not a great look. Heck, I even tweeted about it a bit myself. But let's take a step back. While I absolutely think Netflix is somewhat responsible for some of the bizarre changes here, not the least of which being that they apparently didn't have the money to shell out for the song Fly Me to the Moon. Weird. The issue with the translation might go back to a different source. So this is a little story that I have to share that I promise this will get back to Evangelion, but you're going to have to bear with me. Earlier this year, in March of 2019, I went to the movie theater to watch Fate Stay Night, Heaven's Feel, Part 2, Lost Butterfly. Yes, all of those words are one title. As part of the screening, instead of just running the movie with subtitles, the movie also featured a bizarre introduction wherein they interviewed the actors who play Shiro Emiya and Sakura Mato, respectively. The interview was very, very, very cringy. It was shot in front of blinds. There was an 8x10 poster for the movie behind the two actors. They clearly weren't coached much on what to say and just kind of started talking about random things. Eventually, though, it did come back around to, oh, this is for the American debut. And the actress playing Sakura, whose name I can't remember right now, said to her co-star, going to the American debut was very strange, because they kept being loud during the movie. American fans seemed to cheer whenever characters they liked came on screen, and they would boo when characters they didn't like came on screen. The male co-star responded, "Oh, that is quite odd. You couldn't do that in Japan. I think I would find that annoying." Alright, I promised I would bring this back around to Eva. This is going to make sense. So, Evangelion Movie 3.33 is another piece of Evangelion whose English localization was probably the most controversial thing Eva had before this point when Netflix did their release. Evangelion 3.33, the third rebuild movie, was released in Japan in 2012, but it didn't have a US release until 2016. At least not a home release. Now, the movie did get a release in the US in some select theaters. And that theatrical debut happened first at Otakon in 2004. Now, at the Otakon debut, people from Kara, the studio that produces Evangelion... Oh, hey, another side note here. So, Evangelion was, of course, created by Hideaki Anno, who was a co-founder of the studio Gainax. Gainax was the previous owner of Evangelion until Anno struck out on his own, founded a new studio known as Kara, and there was a kind of ugly-ish legal battle over who actually owns the rights to Evangelion. If you want a fun way of watching how it played out, all you have to do is look at the spines of the Evangelion manga that were released in English. The early volumes all say, by Yoshiyuki Sadamoto, based on a concept by Gainax. But as the books go on, it becomes by Gainax and Kara, then eventually Kara and Gainax, until you get to the last two books when it says based on a concept by Kara and Kara alone. So, yeah, a little bit of legal craziness going on here. So the people from Kara were at the debut for Evangelion 3.33, and because this was an anime movie being shown to an American audience, the American audience was getting excited. This film, it gives people a lot to be excited about in the first place. The story moves in an interesting direction. There's some really fun character interactions. It's frankly the first time that I found Mari Makinami to be a tolerable and actually kind of fun character. But last, and probably the exact opposite of least, the interactions between Shinji Ikari and Kaoru Nagisa are way more overtly homoerotic. The subtext is almost completely gone, and it becomes text, a main part of the movie. From what I've been told about this initial dub, the localization that was produced by Funimation and directed by Chris Cason really leaned into this. Some people called it a fan service heavy dub that was not shying away from the homoerotic nature of the two characters, and especially after how much the shippers really latched onto this aspect of the film when it was traveling through the fan sub scene, it shouldn't be a surprise that Funimation would lean into that. The excitement from the audience, according to people who were there, mortified Studio Kara. Kara thought the film was meant to be taken seriously and weren't happy with the fact that people were loudly engaging with and even laughing at the movie. While I wasn't there and I can't presume to know the intentions of the people from Studio Kara, it seems safe to assume, with my limited understanding of Japanese cultural norms, that they read this as an insult to the movie. And I feel like this is a safe assumption because after this debut, the release of the Evangelion 3.33 home video was delayed for 2 whole years. 3.33 finally hit US shelves on Blu-ray and DVD in 2016. The release was nice, like the quality of the video was very nice, but the official reason that Funimation gave for the long delay was that Kara was overseeing a new version of the localized script. They were re-recording the entire dub from scratch, and I got this confirmed from Tiffany Grant, who plays Asuka herself. They literally had to restart and re-record everything, so it would be up to Kara's standard for quality. The new translator who did this script for the 3.33 dub is the same Kara employee who wrote the script for the Netflix release of Evangelion. So here we are, back at the Netflix thing. I wanted this to be a lot more simple. I wanted this to be that Netflix somehow was gun-shy, that this was an American homophobia problem, and that Netflix was so afraid of a bad reaction from the homophobe demographic that they decided to tone down the homoerotic undertones of episode 24 of Evangelion along with the film End of Evangelion. But it's looking, from the research that I've done, like this was a decision on Kara's part. And if it is, that's really disappointing. Kara has profited off of this more than basically anybody. Hell, there is literally a set of engagement rings sold with Shinji and Kaoru as the models of these actual real-world engagement rings, and yet they were willing to tone down the homoerotic subtext because they were afraid of American audience reactions. Now, I have had some people come up to me and say this is a misunderstanding, that myself and other fans were reading too much into the use of the Japanese word ski, which could be used as like as well as love. Even on the Twitter handle of the translator, he makes the excuse that he was trying to make the script as accurate as possible, and that it's better to leave it kind of, ambiguous, because it's fun for the fans to read into. No, it's not. But no, leaving it ambiguous isn't helpful, mostly because it's hurtful to the entire queer community getting, again, just shoved into the background in one of the few series where there was a canonically homoerotic relationship. But also, every other piece of Evangelion media backs this up. It's not just a wedding ring endorsement, it's scenes from the manga where it is played way less subtly. Every new iteration of Evangelion, the relationship between Shinji and Kaoru becomes less and less subtext, and this comes along and erases one of the most important and powerful examples of a queer character in any piece of media. Especially for me, growing up. I wish I had a really good answer for this. I wish I had, to follow all of that frustration up, that I had, a good answer for you guys and a solution. But I don't. This is what we're stuck with for the time being. I do hope, at the very least, Netflix finds some way to get the ADV dub up as well and have that as an option, as something to watch, because I do think it's the better version. And if you're going to watch it in English, that would be the version that I seek out. If you're going to watch it in Japanese, it's still there, but know that some of those subtitles, especially in regards to whether or not Shinji is worthy of Kaoru's grace, might not be very reliable. I want people to check out this show. And if you haven't yet, give it a fair shot. It's still one of my favorites. If you're bothered by this, you have every right to be bothered, but point your frustration at Studio Kara. They're the hypocrites in this. They're the ones who did you wrong and did their own series wrong. Don't take it out on the voice actors or the new staff who worked on this new dub. This isn't on them. They're just free agents who are trying to get a meal. Because, that's capitalism, and actors need to eat. and yeah, it sucks. And no, I don't think this dub needs to exist, but I'm not going to attack actors who are just doing their jobs just because I don't want this product to exist. I love Evangelion, and I probably always will. This is just such an unfortunate way for the series to get treated, and it deserves a lot better. So, as always, keep on spocking in the free world. If you like what I'm doing here, please hit that subscribe button, hit the bell so YouTube actually tells you when I make new things, and maybe support what I'm doing here on Patreon. You can find the link for that down in the doobly-doo. Take care of yourselves, guys, and remember, fly me to the moon. And let me play among the stars. Let me see what spring is like on Jupiter and Mars.